Have you ever wondered why you keep going back to the same habits even when they hurt you? Why we scroll endlessly, consume mindlessly, chase dopamine like it's oxygen, and still feel empty? Why we reach for things that numb us instead of things that wake us up? Carl Jung saw this long before social media, before smartphones, before modern addiction as we know it. And what he discovered is chilling. Jung believed that addiction wasn't just a disease or a bad habit. He said it was a spiritual problem, not in a religious sense, but in the deepest, most existential way possible. He saw addiction as a cry from the soul, a signal that something vital had gone missing, that the self, the deep, unconscious totality of who we are, was being ignored, denied, or suppressed. And when that happens, the psyche doesn't stay quiet. It compensates. It reaches for anything, substances, people, work, even self-destructive behaviors, to fill the void where meaning should be. Jung once said, "Every form of addiction is bad, no matter whether the narcotic be alcohol or morphine or idealism." Let that sink in. Even idealism, even our highest principles can become addictive if they are used to escape reality. That's the core of Jung's insight. Addiction is not about the thing you're addicted to. It's about the escape from pain, from emptiness, from the unbearable burden of being a fragmented self in a chaotic world. The chilling part is this: the more intelligent, sensitive, or self-aware you are, the more elaborate your addictions can become. Not just obvious vices like drugs or alcohol. No, you can be addicted to productivity, to perfection, to validation, to helping others, to being good, and the world will praise you for it, even as you silently deteriorate inside. So here's the question I want you to wrestle with. What do you reach for when you feel disconnected from yourself? What's your default escape when reality gets too loud? Is it your phone? Your goals? Your relationships? The things you're most addicted to are often the things that stop you from facing the truth of your inner world. In Jungian terms, they are masks, parts of the persona, the social self you wear to survive. And the more you feed the persona, the more the shadow, the repressed, unconscious part of you, grows in silence. That's the real danger. Because the shadow doesn't stay buried forever. It leaks. It sabotages. It breaks through in moments of rage, depression, obsession, or numbness. And in modern life, addiction has become the shadow's favorite disguise. Think about it. We live in a dopamine economy. Everything is designed to addict you. Your phone is a slot machine in your pocket. Your feed is an infinite loop of emotional manipulation. Your job might be built on constant achievement with no inner grounding. And your sense of self, fragmented across screens, filters, and roles. Jung would look at this and say, this is not just a cultural crisis. This is a psychic epidemic. Modern culture rewards the persona, the mask, and ignores the self. So we become addicted not just to substances or habits, but to surfaces, to appearances, to the illusion of connection, meaning, and success, rather than the real thing. And that's what makes the addictive mind so dangerous. It's not just about craving, it's about forgetting. Forgetting who you are when you're not performing. Forgetting what matters when you're not chasing. Jung believed that addiction is, at its core, a misdirected search for God. Again, not in a religious sense, but in the sense of wholeness, integration, inner unity. He said, the cure for many forms of addiction is found not in the suppression of the craving, but in the deepening of meaning. And that's where we begin to reclaim our power, not by fighting the addiction directly, but by understanding what it's trying to tell us. So let's go deeper. When you're addicted to something, anything, your psyche is trying to restore balance. It's trying to compensate for a split, a wound, an absence. Maybe you weren't seen as a child. Maybe you were taught that love must be earned. Maybe you internalized the message that your worth depends on your productivity. And so your addiction becomes a ritual, a way to momentarily escape the pain of disconnection. But here's the paradox. The more you escape, the more you disconnect. And the more you disconnect, the more you crave. It's a cycle, a loop. And unless something breaks it, it deepens. The question is, what breaks the loop? Jung would say, consciousness, awareness, the courage to confront the unconscious parts of yourself, not to judge them, but to integrate them. The shadow, once seen, loses its grip. The craving, once understood, becomes a teacher. Addiction is not the enemy, it's the signal. The enemy is unconsciousness, and the medicine is meaning, not generic meaning, your path, your inner truth. The thing you've been avoiding becomes the thing you must face. The thing you've been numbing yourself from becomes the doorway to your liberation. And this is where the journey turns. You realize that your addictive mind isn't just a weakness, it's a compass. It points toward the places in you that are still unresolved. It reveals where you've abandoned yourself. And if you can follow that trail inward, past the cravings, past the fear, past the shame, you begin to recover something far more precious than control. You begin to recover yourself, not persona, not the mask, but the living, breathing, evolving self that Jung said was the true goal of life. So I ask you again, what are you addicted to right now? What role are you clinging to? What emotion are you avoiding? What truth are you not ready to feel? Because until you face those questions, you're not free. You're just functioning. And function without freedom is the most dangerous kind of prison because it looks like success. The chilling truth about the addictive mind is that it can wear a suit, have 1 million followers, be admired, be envied, and still be lost. Jung knew this. He said, people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. But what if we flipped the script? What if addiction wasn't a shameful secret, but a sacred signal? And what if the pain you're numbing is actually the birthplace of your purpose? Because here's the real twist. Once you stop running, once you sit in the silence, once you let the craving speak instead of silencing it, something strange happens. The addiction loses its power. Not all at once, not magically, but gradually, as you get closer to the truth, as you begin to feel the pain you've been avoiding, as you begin to hear the voice beneath the noise. That voice is you, and it's been waiting. Let's get brutally honest. We live in a world that thrives, literally thrives, on your disconnection from yourself. Every scroll, click, swipe, purchase, and binge is data. It's currency. It's profit. And the more disoriented you are internally, the more predictable and profitable you become externally. Jung would call this a collective shadow, a system built not just on addiction, but on the constant reinforcement of unconscious behavior. It's not just that you're addicted, it's that something wants you to be. And it's not necessarily a person or a conspiracy, it's a pattern, a machine that feeds on your fragmentation. Think about it. If you were whole, if you were grounded, if you were deeply in touch with your inner self, would you still need to buy that thing? Would you still compulsively check notifications? Would you still need the algorithm to tell you who you are, what matters, and what to fear? Probably not. Because a connected individual is unpredictable. They don't follow trends, they create meaning. They don't consume to fill a void, they create from fullness, and that makes them harder to manipulate. Jung's chilling truth wasn't just about individuals, it was about civilizations. He believed that when a society neglects the soul, it breeds mass neurosis. And what do we see today? Anxiety, depression, burnout, skyrocketing. But the economy, still growing. That's not a coincidence. That's a system feeding on your forgetfulness. The addictive mind is not just an individual curse, it's a commodity. You become more valuable to the system the less you value yourself, because then you're always reaching for something outside, validation, escape, comfort. And every time you reach, someone profits. But here's the sinister part. The system also gives you just enough relief to keep you coming back. A hit of dopamine. A moment of distraction. A brief illusion of control. It mimics what Jung called individuation, the process of becoming whole, but without the depth, the courage, or the transformation. It's hollow, but it feels like something. And that's what keeps you trapped. We have to ask, how much of what we call normal life is actually built on addiction? Not just to substances, but to identity, to drama, to noise, to speed. We're addicted to being busy, to being seen, to being right. And it's encouraged because it keeps the machine running. Jung warned that unless we become conscious of these patterns, we become their slaves. He said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. That's the haunting part. We think we're choosing, but we're often just reacting. We think we're free, but we're often just conditioned. And the world is more than happy to keep that illusion alive. But here's the revelation. The addictive mind is not evil. It's not your enemy. It's a survival response. It's the psyche's attempt to cope with unbearable tension, the tension between who you think you should be and who you truly are. Addiction is the smoke. The fire is the disconnection from your deeper self. And the system doesn't cause that disconnection, but it does exploit it. So if you want to break free, you don't just resist the addiction, you reclaim the connection. You reconnect with the parts of you that got exiled, the parts that didn't fit the mold, the parts that felt too weird, too sensitive, too intense. Because those parts, that's your soul trying to break through. The moment you begin to remember who you are outside the system, outside the algorithm, the branding, the roles, you become dangerous. Not in a destructive way, but in a deeply liberated way. You start to see clearly, to feel deeply, to act intentionally. You stop reacting and start responding. You stop consuming and start creating. And the system, it doesn't know what to do with that, because it can't manipulate someone who's fully alive. Jung's ultimate message was that freedom doesn't come from rebellion, it comes from integration, from facing the shadow, healing the split, and becoming whole. So I'll ask you again, who benefits from your disconnection? Who profits when you hate yourself? When you numb your pain? When you chase artificial highs instead of facing your inner lows? And what would happen if, instead of continuing the cycle, you chose to pause, to listen, to feel? What would happen if you stopped feeding the machine and started feeding your soul? That single decision, that moment of awareness, is the beginning of the end for the addictive mind. Not because it disappears, but because it transforms. It becomes a compass pointing you home. There's a strange and beautiful possibility buried inside the heart of addiction, one that Carl Jung hinted at, but that most of us overlook. What if your cravings are not weaknesses to be destroyed, but messages to be decoded? What if the very things you run from, the cravings, the compulsions, the obsessions, are actually invitations? What if addiction is not the end of your story, but the beginning of a deeper one? Jung saw that when the psyche is wounded, it doesn't just suffer, it calls out. And often it calls out through the very things you think you're supposed to eliminate. The craving, in this view, is not your enemy. It's your soul, disguised. Let's think about this. A person addicted to alcohol may seem, from the outside, like someone who just lacks control. But Jung would ask, what is it that alcohol symbolizes for that person? Is it confidence? Is it connection? Is it escape from shame? Is it relief from the unbearable tension of a life lived inauthentically? And then he'd go even further. He'd say, what if the addiction is a distorted attempt to return to wholeness? Not a healthy path, but a symbolic one, a misguided ritual. Jung believed the addict was often seeking what only spiritual discipline, deep inner work, or authentic connection could provide. And in a society that offers none of that, the addict finds substitutes, cheap imitations. But the longing behind the addiction, that's real, that's sacred.